Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Possibilities with Monique DeMeo. I am thrilled and excited to have Linda Bjork with me today. Let me tell you a little bit about our wonderful guest. Linda Bjork heads the Inner Business Institute and is the founder of Mindfulness Intelligence and the author of the leadership book Inner Business, Training Your Mind for Leadership Success. She is also co-author of Mind Skills with Stephanie Michko. She leads professionals all over the globe to their highest leadership potential. Linda led a creative agency to global recognition from 2004 to 2014, based in New York City and Stockholm, Sweden. With continued outstanding financial results and an outspoken focus on mind training for the staff, Linda became known as the Meditating CEO. The agency won numerous awards under Linda's leadership, among them Agency of the Year in 2009. In addition to her engineering, design, and business background, Linda is a certified MBSR leader, a certified success coach, and an elected evolutionary leader, and an ordained interfaith interspiritual minister. Welcome, Linda.
Thank you. That's a mouthful right there.
It is, but it's wonderful.
It is. And thank you so much for inviting me to this conversation. I know some of the things that you want to talk about, and I'm just so happy to put this positivity and profundity out into the world. So thank you.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. So to give context, Linda and I met at a roundtable hosted by our good friend Red, known as Red's Table. She's an amazing woman that brings women together in a context that allows them to get to know each other and really experience their beings before they worry about what it is that they do for a living. And there are a bunch of different games that we play to guess what we do for each other does for a living, which I find really interesting. But Linda's immediate positivity and energy and setting of intention for that evening allowed me to see who she was and is for the world. And I thought, oh, we got to get her on this podcast. Got to get her on this
Thank
podcast.
you.
So yeah, I want to unpack because you have a really cool communications and branding background, and you run agencies. So tell us what this journey looked like, and then author and all of it.
Oh gosh, yes. The journey really started with me being in an executive position in the branding world. And I had a fabulous time in the branding world. It was so much fun. And when I took over as a CEO, after having been a creative director in the United States, I headed up this Swedish company and started as a CEO in 2004. And I was kind of musing with myself and thinking, how can we have all three things going between making great work, like work we're really proud of? How can we simultaneously make money and be abundant in that way? And three, how can everybody feel great in the process? And that third parameter in 2004, surprisingly, was kind of new, right?
Oh,
And
absolutely.
so as I started, oh my gosh, it's 20 years ago.
I
So
know. I was going to say
it's a,
that. I was holding on to that
yeah,
thought before.
yeah. Oh, so yeah, it's been quite the road. And I had at that point, I had been meditating myself for almost 10 years. And so I sort of kept those things separated, like my meditation and that inner work that I was doing was kind of my hobby or like a separate thing from work. And then I went to work and it was like, here you need to show up and have results and all that good jazz. But then when I took over as a CEO in particular, I started seeing those paths kind of coming closer and closer together. And so around 2007, I introduced mindfulness to the staff. And that made such a huge difference. In 2007, I remember this because we landed 7 out of 7 pitches that year. And that's kind of unheard of, in the,
I
in the
know this.
branding.
That's
Yeah,
just not
yeah,
happening in
yeah,
branding. No.
not happening, right? And so I kind of knew I was onto something, like getting the staff. At the time, we were talking about high performance, but I had this feeling that Well, there's something about the wellness component that needs to be there. And since then, I've been doing a lot of trial and errors. I was a CEO for 10 years, so not only did I have control over the wallet, I also had time to make mistakes and just try out different things. And so a lot of that journey and what worked and what didn't work is part of the book Inner Business. And I really wrote the book that I wished that I had had all along, because it took me a long time to conduct all these experiments. Right. Yep.
That's
You did
not
one
why
of
I
those
wrote
too.
my book too. Same thing. It's like, this is the book I wanted to have when I was 25 and 30 years old. What are you doing? Yeah, exactly. I'm sorry.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And it's it was a really great journey for me and hopefully for the staff. And I set out some big goals at the very beginning. I wanted our very small agency to go global. And by the time I left, we have had 5 big global clients, and we had many people working not only in Stockholm but other parts in Sweden and in New York City. And so I really felt that doing this alternative way of leadership, again, this has nothing to do with me being perfect along the way. It's about having a very open and honest trial and error type of attitude towards leadership. And there were no references back then to mind training or mindfulness at work or anything like that. But because we did so well, won all these awards, and we were on the top 5 most profitable agencies in Scandinavia so many years running, and people were just like, what are they doing over there again? Like, what is that thing? So that's when I got that sort of title, the Meditating CEO. Super interesting process, including what was the big resistance from people that were in my company and what actually worked really, really well. And I think that so much of that I'm still seeing now when I work with this kind of mind training and consciousness development. And honestly, stress reduction is a big part of it still, maybe even more so than ever. And I'm seeing the same themes and same resistances. The difference now is that we're leaning on upwards of 10,000 different research, scientific research pointing us to and proving to us that this work is not just a fluke in a one-time shop, or it just happens with this particular group because they are creatives or anything like that. So that was the big the gist of the journey as such.
Yeah, I wanna kind of unpack a little bit because there are a lot of executive women listening to this podcast, and they're probably because you're a pioneer. So again, to your point, there were no reference points. It wasn't like all of these entrepreneurs had started companies, podcasts, books on
That's right.
mindfulness or mindfulness training, or more importantly, how to bring the what they used to call woo woo into corporate. So,
Love
right?
that.
So, yeah, because it woo woo in corporate, to your point, you would meditate in your personal time, but when you got to the office, you're all business, right? It's that kind of separation of church and state, as I used to call it in publishing. So, I want you to reconcile for the listener. What did you small things that you started to implement that became programmatic, that became the way it was, that became the culture of your organization? So, what did you start with, and how did you deploy it?
One of the things that I noticed after a while, that it's true that you can lead horses to water, but they have to drink. And so, yeah, of course, I had some pull because I was the CEO, and hopefully one that people listen to. And what I did do was that I brought outside help in, even though I had the capacity to lead my people. That was not, I did not feel that, that was not, you, every mom knows this. You can only have so many roles with your children. And I'm not suggesting that I was a mom and they were children, but I am suggesting that in the
But you can
authority
because it's
role, correct, kind of.
you really can.
But
Do you have kids now? I forget. I forget if you have kids.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, I
So
do. Yeah.
how old are
And
they?
so And so my daughter's 14, and I noticed this very, very clearly. Yeah, because when COVID hit and we had to do all the homeschooling suddenly, so to speak, or do school from home, and I'm like, I have an engineering degree. Let me help you with your math. I write books. Let me help you with English, you know? And that was just like that. No, that's where the limit. It was just like, no, you can do all of this. You can love me, you can feed me, you can support me, you can put me to bed, whatever, but you cannot be my teacher. And so I've had that experience in many different facets in my life. And you just have to recognize when it's time to bring in outside help. And so that's partly what happened. Thankfully, I saw that pretty early, and I'm sort of happy that that's the way it panned out. Because what happened then was that it was so funny because in the beginning I said, okay, we're all going to do mindfulness and we're going to go through a program with this wonderful group coming in. And then some people were like, no, I don't want to meditate because to them it just sounded religious, you
Woo
know,
woo. It's woo
which
woo.
yeah, woo woo. It's the woo woo again. Listen, no, we're not doing woo woo stuff. And
My
and then I
cheeks hurt from
said,
laughing so hard. I can't.
right, right, because it's we all recognize ourselves in this, right? And so then I said, which always surprises me that you can be so open in communication. And then I said, how about this? I'll strike you a deal. We're not going to call it meditation. We're going to call it focus training. Are you in then? And they were just like, yeah, okay, I guess I can try it. So then
Slap another brand on it and you got it going on.
I know, in the branding agency. Yeah. And it's like, yeah, that totally worked. So that was so funny. And then I got everybody on board except one person who, and I said, listen, I am here to hear your argument. And if I buy it, I buy it. If not, we're going to have to continue talking. And he said, now, mind you, all the people that were against it were men. So this man said, I don't feel comfortable with this type of intimate work in front of my coworkers. And then I said, you know what? I buy that. I'm going to send you to an intensive course, 4 days, full days, and you're going to have to do it there instead. So it's just like, I hear you, and here's a solution to this problem. So he was sent away, and he came back, and very analytical person. He was just like, well, there were some benefits to it, and that created a platform for me because again, now the horses had actually had something to drink. In other words, they had experienced themselves deeply. And I can talk about experiencing yourself deeply till I'm blue in the face. Not until you experience yourself deeply will you have any idea what I'm talking about. And so that was the first big step. And from there, it was so much easier to make this routine. We had it every Monday production meeting, and it was just something we did together was to land in meditation, and it became part of the culture. And I attribute a lot of our success, especially our creative, big heights that we came to, but also the comfort for account directors to negotiate, to be just a really good human with other people. And so that's where I think the training came so much in hand. So yeah, that was some of the unpacking right there. I know you recognize yourself.
Yes, because and I did a quick, what we call a consider the possibilities, which is my 10 or so minute segments between my guest ones. So it's one week it's a guest, and the other week it's like me spewing on something for 10 minutes. And the last two were inertia is a powerful thing, meaning people don't like change. Like they just resist change for change's sake. It's taboo to them, and they can't wrap their brain around how they can accept it. And then success is not binary. Just because you're succeeding doesn't mean that that person is failing, you know? And so it's a very interesting distinction with a massive difference. And I give you so much credit for being so cutting edge and bringing this kind of thinking to a corporate environment, but it worked out really well for them. So maybe they got the memo. You know what I mean? So, what is it? What is that American expression? I get them all wrong all the time, but it's success has many fathers, but failure has only one mother, or something like this. I don't exactly know what it is, but the point is, when it works, everyone's like, see, she had a great idea. If it had, see, she's brilliant, So, and if it had failed, everybody be like, see, it's not wasn't my idea, it was her idea. But anyway, so what are you finding about women versus men and this these mindfulness practices and habits? What have your observations been?
Well, the first observation, if we're just talking mindfulness and being ready for this type of work, I can tell you that women are much more open to it and women are more drawn to it. So that's sort of just the first observation. And there is, so there are stats about this, and the stats range from being 50-50 to being a third for men and two-thirds women in terms of the ones practicing, how many percent are women versus men. But I think that it's a little bit like when I see those 50-50, I'm like, yeah, but that's when you ask men about how many household chores they make, they're like totally exaggerate.
Oh my God,
And
yes.
those stats are just like, you're joking. Like we live in this world. We know these things are a lie. And so they kind of overestimate, like, I did go out with the garbage. No, no, how much responsibility do you take with this? And it's not just because I'm a woman, and of course I hang around a lot of women, but this is a world I live in, and it is definitely more so women that are drawn to mindfulness. Having said that, I do think it's worth drilling a little deeper, because mindfulness is just one of the things I do, and in the system that I do, the mindfulness intelligence, it's really about having so many more deeper insights about what it means to be a human and what it is that drives us in different ways. And of course, a lot of the things that we need to do to show up in the world to our fullest potential is to clean up our subconscious mind, where we have all this erroneous programming that's going to be in the way for basically everything we do, right? This is where I think it's really interesting to talk about the differences between men and women. Because if you look at women, we have programming that looks different, especially when we are our ripe, awesome age. We definitely have
And I'm more
a
ripe and more
different.
awesome than you are. I'm just saying,
That's right.
from an age perspective. Shh.
We're we're here, we're mature. Finally, life is beginning, because you know what? We have peeled off so much BS from our lives. And so we can look at these things and we can see that, wow, we were programmed for people pleasing to a degree that men have not been. We are programmed to feel shame around our bodies in a way that men have not. We are programmed to taking care of others first, because if we don't, we're selfish. And that is a very, very big difference in what we have to deal with on the inside, and the reckoning that we meet when we are doing deeper work. And just also think about, now that we are a little mature, we can talk about this, but there's a whole emotional, hormonal mood merry-go-round, or worse, for women, that I think are. So this is where it's hard to tell what's the chicken and what's the egg. But so not only do we have hormones that men don't, and we have to deal with the impact emotionally of those hormones. We also have outer feedback that tells us that we are moody, we're emotional,
We're
women can't
bitchy.
be leaders because we're bitchy, absolutely. If we ask for anything, we're greedy and they're going to rescind the offer because we wanted it. And it's just these crazy things that men don't have to deal with. And if they do, it's like, yeah, but this much compared to us. And so when we start sinking into ourselves and really finding ourselves in mindfulness and what I have expanded to be mindfulness intelligence, we are aware in a non judging way. And we learn how to heal ourselves from the inside. And we have this healing capacity. I see us very much like a self cleaning oven, right? And so we just have to get out of our own way. But when we start working on reprogramming ourselves and we have a simultaneous healing practice that go along the way, that's when you see that the impact for women looks different. We're already in touch with our emotions. Thanks. We the stuff that we need to clear out, when that is cleared out and we start making choices that are so much more healthy, and we do that from a healed perspective where we don't necessarily put others first to the detriment of ourselves. And we realize that our strength is important to be good in the world. That process looks different. I love working with women. It's a beautiful process. It's a pretty specific process and it has a specific order, but it does look different. It does.
So let's talk about your processes. Though you wrote a book, business, and the business. Both it's on a skill set, and I ordered your book, by the way. I haven't been able to read it before this podcast, which is a bit of my disappointment, but I'll get there. The idea of marrying the emotional and the intelligence in a way that has you show up as a better leader. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Obviously we in touch with yourself, but I want you to dig deeper into what is it that you're finding is the common thread with women that are successful leaders.
Thank you for the question. It's actually a broad and deep one where the marriage between the emotional is actually the energetic. And so what we learn, and I love looking at what's the truth behind that, what's the truth behind that, and what's behind that, and what's behind that, right? And so in that quest during these 20 years that I've been at it, i I see that there's more than just the emotions to this. Although emotions are, of course, a strong emitter of energy as a human. So I'm not discounting emotions at all. But what's really behind that is the way that we show up energetically in the world. And this is where we can talk about this in so many different ways. But if we specifically look at what makes women successful, I see there are two things that women do really, really well when they're successful. And the one has to do with having great integrity. It's such an important, and it's the integrity to, first of all, you have to be really good at what you do if you're a woman. You cannot not know what you do. Yeah, you can't be mediocre and get away with it. So we have to be really good at what we're doing. And I see that with all the successful women, and I work with quite a few. They are sharp. They know what they're doing. They're interested in what they're doing. And they keep on digging. They keep on working, and they keep in the forefront of their field and what they do. And they don't lean back on past achievements. And I think that's beautiful. Within integrity comes a lot of energetic skill set, because it's also, how are you keeping your integrity in a room? How are you reading a room? How are you setting boundaries in a room? And so these are so many of the things that we have outlined, Stephanie Michko and I, who used to be the CTO of Charter Communications. And so I've worked with a lot of her teams, and it was a really, really awesome learning experience and legacy experience for the work that we did. And so many of these things are outlined in Mind Skills, the book that we wrote together. And the integrity part of it definitely plays a big role. And it has to do with you have to be skilled at what you're doing and how you're using your mind. And the integrity part has to do with the core of that is being true to yourself. But then the other big component that I see that women do so well who are successful, actually not the ones who are playing mini men, but the ones that I admire and who are successful, they're very caring. They can be caring because they have their integrity, because they have learned to set the boundaries, because they know what they're doing.
And they're comfortable in who they are.
Yes, they are.
There's a French expression is elle est à l'aise dans sa propre peau, and it's like you're comfortable in your own skin. And I think for me, that has happened only in the last decade, where I'm okay saying I'm not for everyone, but I'm comfortable
Right.
and I'm secure in my word, in my integrity, in my how I show up and what I deliver as a leader. I'm not apologetic about it anymore.
Beautiful. And I love that. And it's an important part. And when we learn how to marry our brain with our hearts, we can do that without being standoffish or without unnecessarily hurting people, or I don't know, just show up in a way where we're not proud of ourselves. When you marry the brain and the heart, you really have that capacity for being super skilled and super scary, super
Scary too.
caring. Yeah,
That too.
scary too.
You can be scary if you're super caring and smart at the same time. That makes everybody uncomfortable.
I'm scary. Let me tell you what that means.
Well, I'm sure you are scary to a lot of people who, again, back to what you said, I believe, if you unpack that, people who are scared of somebody like you or me is somebody that is not comfortable in their own grounded self, and they're all in their authenticity, in their voice, in their choices. They're not confident. So you can only be confronted when you're standing in a place that's not solid. If you're solid in your grounding and you're solid in who you are, people that have power are not scary. They're interesting.
It's true. Yeah, it is very true. I am hoping that people who are scared of me are not the ones who feel that they don't stand on solid ground. I hope that I can help them. The people I tend to scare are the ones who unapologetically live with their shadow, and they are just really making decisions based on their own darkness. And the definition of a shadow is that you actually don't see what's there. It's in your shadow, you can't see it. And the one thing that they don't want is for you to call that out. They don't want that revealed. And people do what works. And so if it has worked for me to be greedy, if it's worked for me so far to be aggressive and a bully as a boss, it's not that I necessarily love that style. It's just that it works. It works. You know, I don't have time to think about these things. And so I do think that this work is for everyone, but it does take courage. And not everybody is prepared to do what courage asks us to do, because courage is not just bravery. As you know, it comes from the word cur, which is heart. And so we're asking people to have bravery from the heart. And that's hard. Women who succeed have that big heart and they have that big brain, and they are masters at making people work together and come together under a vision that people feel excited about instead of being scared into submission. So that's what I see with women that are successful and that I personally think are super awesome.
Exactly. You want to spend more time with them. That's why I had so much fun at Red's table. So question, what do you want to have the future of business? Because obviously you've written two books. you have a point of view, a very solid and very passionate point of view on both mindfulness and marrying the cœur with the la tête, as they say, right? And with the head and the heart. What do you want to have happen in the world of business in your legacy?
Thank you for the question, first of all. And the short answer is that I want people to grow up and clean up enough so that they have the awareness that their actions and their being and their energy have consequences. And so I'm hoping that there's going to be a bit of a lift your gaze, raise your gaze is really what I want to leave as a legacy. And when you raise that gaze to actually be completely in connection with self and with that core of yourself, the core and the cur, so you have the heart and your alignment within, where you can see, because how are we going to innovate? How are we going to make any decisions in business that are going to be good for more than 15 minutes if we don't raise our gaze? And I'm, of course, one of the biggest sins of business right now, and the thing that works against business and the whole world, is the short-sightedness of business. And so I'm hoping that's going to happen, not just from a doing perspective, but also from a being perspective. And, we're living in exciting times. So if I expand on that answer, I have to say that AI is shaking things up, where I'm hoping that I can assist people in understanding what is an inevitable shift in what we value as a good human. And maybe more specifically, what do we value as a good professional or as a good leader? Because that's going to shift over. And specifically, what's going to happen now, because AI is showing us now with all these new language models, that it is basically taken over much of what we have valued as a good worker, manager, leader from before, right? Retaining knowledge, regurgitating data, just having this way of putting different suggestions together based on old data. That's what people have been paid a lot of money to do for decades. And so here we are, and we have the left hemisphere of our neocortex having been so praised as the logical, the analytical, the linear. It's like, oh, that's business, like that's the really value that these people are bringing to the table. And now it's like,
No, it's automated. What are you talking about? What table stakes, baby? That's table stakes. What do you got?
what do you got? Who are you? Who are you besides that? And that is where we need to familiarize ourselves with other beautiful parts of our brains and our heart. I mean, I'm not going to go into a brain lecture right now, but I do believe that I have the platform and the interest and the heart to help people in what may be one of the biggest shifts in human consciousness that we've seen in a very long time.
That's it. I mean, if we want to get it down to just the practicals, the person that says, this is over my head, it's too woo woo, I can't, it's too. The reality is the hard skills have been automated. The hard skills are now institutionalized in the data points of the organization. Now the human factor has to differentiate that organization, that brand, that process. So if you don't have the human factor and that distinguishable difference that you bring as a human to the equation, you're just another data point.
You are, and so replaceable. And then we have these deep pockets of drowning in not having meaning and not having a purpose, not being needed. I mean, there's so many people now who are not being needed. And so we're looking at sort of a mass depression, like a mass anxiety wave coming
Mm,
against us. And we
yeah.
need more healers in the world. We need people in the business world leaders in the business world who understand the deep, deep need for healing right now. And we can do that as we're having fun, as we're making money, as we're innovating things. There's nothing that speaks against that other than the limitations of our consciousness and the way that we use our brains and our hearts.
Perfect. That is literally perfect. That is a great place to just put a fine point on that. Linda, I'm going to tell you, we need to swap books because you are going to see yourself in every bloody chapter of mine. And I have a funny feeling that I'm going to see myself in yours because the things that you've said, like the inner voice, the little voice inside your head, and it's not necessarily serving you, and the stories we tell ourselves and the stories we tell others about ourselves, like it's just I think the reason I wanted to have you on is because we're on the same mission from very different angles, you know. But the reality is, it's not binary. You can be successful, you can make money, and have fun at the same time. It doesn't have to be painful.
That's right. That's right. And I'm so happy to hear about your work and what you're putting out there in the world, because we need to multiply. We need to be so many people doing this type of work. And I'm really hoping that more leaders and managers jump on this train, because not only will they feel so much more empowered in themselves, they're going to make, I think, a bigger impact than they can even imagine in the workplace. And it comes back to just how you show up. We've been so programmed that it's the doing that counts, and we can, because it's the measure, that's what we can measure. And business is nothing if it can't measure something. So it's like, well, we're going to have to reinvent the measuring stick, because we need to measure different metrics, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and that's the work, and that's why it needs to be done in business. Business is the biggest social platform in the world, for crying out loud. This is where we can make the difference. And one of the projects that I have running, I have the great fortune of having so many cool evolutionary leaders on a project called The Becoming of Business, where we talk about business evolution from various different angles. So it could be anything from sustainability. I have a lot of C-suite people coming there talking, but I also have evolutionary biologists. I have Native American chiefs. I have cosmologists. I have experts in consciousness, and so I think it's time to break the silos. I think it's time to really have these discussions over the fence and start realizing it's only when we all come together that this is going to work, because there's just no way that we can solve the complexity of the challenges that come up now if we do it alone. This whole old idea of being the genius, the hero, all of those archetypes are like, dude, that's so old. It's not going to fly.
Command and control is not the way to evolve. Command and control and fear-based or intimidation-based management. Been there, done that, worked for that. Nah, thanks. You'll stand in front of a train for somebody that cares about you.
That's right. That's exactly right. And isn't that such a beautiful, well, maybe we'll take away the train, but let's say let's let's say at least I walk on water for this woman, anytime, whatever you need, because you're always so reasonable. I feel that I'm being cared for. And it comes back to this basic and deepest need that we have, which is to be seen. And I see you with my care, and you see me with the way you care in how you show up at work. And that is a beautiful, profound way of doing business. And you know what? That's going to give you results.
Yes. All right. So now all we need to do, Linda Bjork, is to clone you in 1,000 places and deploy you like a little soldier all around the world.
Everywhere,
Because I
let's do
mean,
it.
everybody needs to hear this message. It's so true. I'm so grateful that you've been here to share your brilliance with us, to share your books with us. I'll put them both in the show notes. I'll put your contact information there as well for people to reach out to you. What is the ask that you have of the audience? What is it that you would like to ask them for, or a wish that you want to put out to the universe via this platform?
Raise your gaze. Just really look around. Here's what I know about most people who go to work. They're too busy and their calendars are too booked back to back to have time for reflection and to have time to understand what really matters and what's really going to bring the results that they're longing for. And not only long for, but they're like working too hard to get there. It's so unnecessary. It's like you're wasting your life. There are much quicker and more awesome ways to get there. So just take that beat, stop, look around, and see if there's something that you could be open to that feels right to you. Get that kind of different support and carry you forward. And you're going to see your life is going to change. And my life would change because that would be my ask. That's my wish.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so very much. This has been an amazing, amazing experience. Thank you, Linda, so much. All right, guys, tune in next time. Thank you, Linda. Thank you so much for listening to Possibilities with Monique DeMeo, where we unpack life as a female mover and shaker. If you like the show, please consider liking it, or better still, subscribing to it and leaving us a rating. It truly does help. Also, you can pick up my book, The 7 Secrets to Creating a Life You Love, a practical guide for women in leadership. You can find the book, other episodes of this podcast, and how to stay in touch at moniquedemeo.com. DEMAIO. I look forward to seeing you again soon. With gratitude, Monique.